Have you ever noticed that in almost every meeting, classroom, or social gathering, the person who actually knows the most is usually the one saying the least, while the loudest voice often belongs to someone who is just repeating popular opinions or fighting to inflate their own fragile ego? It is a fascinating psychological paradox that goes against everything modern society teaches us about success and confidence. Because we are constantly told that to be a recognizable leader, you need to speak up constantly, dominate the conversation, and make sure your commanding presence is felt by everyone in the room from the exact moment you walk through the door. But the absolute truth is that highly intelligent people operate on a completely different frequency, treating conversations not as a stage for theatrical performance or ego validation, but as a crucial opportunity for data collection, which is exactly why they so often choose the strategic power of silence over the fleeting, hollow validation of simply being heard by the masses. To truly understand why smart people stay quiet, you have to look closely at the underlying biological mechanics of how a highly active, profoundly analytical brain processes social interactions and complex information in real time. For the intellectually gifted, speaking is never just a thoughtless reflex. It is a highly calculated decision that requires burning valuable cognitive energy, and they intuitively understand the critical concept of conversational return on investment. When they sit back and observe the chaos around them, they are not being shy, socially awkward, aloof, or arrogant, though their intentional silence is frequently misinterpreted exactly that way by highly extroverted peers who falsely equate talking with contributing. Rather, they're actively analyzing the entire room, reading subtle shifts in body language, identifying the underlying psychological motives of the people speaking, and meticulously mapping out the invisible social dynamics at play. They know that once you speak, you immediately reveal your hand, your personal biases, your current emotional state, and your absolute limits of understanding. But as long as you remain completely silent, you hold absolutely all the cards and can silently absorb the collective intelligence or sometimes the collective foolishness of everyone else present without risking your own positioning. This quiet, calculating behavior is deeply tied to the famous Dunning-Kruger effect, a well-documented cognitive bias where people with very limited knowledge significantly overestimate their own competence, leading them to speak with absolute, unshakable certainty about complex, nuanced topics they barely even understand. In stark contrast, highly intelligent individuals are acutely, sometimes painfully aware of the vastness of what they do not know, meaning they naturally hesitate to make definitive, sweeping statements unless they have rigorously verified the facts, deeply analyzed the nuanced gray areas, and considered multiple opposing viewpoints from every conceivable angle. This inherent intellectual humility forces them to listen much longer and infinitely harder than the average person, constantly updating their internal mental models instead of rushing to aggressively defend a fragile ego or win a pointless argument just for the sake of looking smart in front of an audience. Furthermore, smart people heavily prioritize active, empathetic listening, which means they are continuously processing the deep subtext of the conversation, what is deliberately being left unsaid, why a specific person is forcefully pushing a certain narrative, and exactly what hidden emotional triggers are secretly driving the heated discussion, rather than just waiting eagerly for their turn to talk like the vast majority of people normally do. Another absolutely crucial factor in their prolonged silence is their severe, almost allergic aversion to meaningless conflict and highly draining energy vampires, as emotionally intelligent individuals quickly recognize that getting into aggressive, cyclical debates with stubbornly close-minded people is a massive, unforgivable waste of precious time and finite mental resources. They have learned the hard way through years of exhausting past experiences that you simply cannot logic someone out of a position that they didn't logic themselves into in the first place. So when someone starts aggressively pushing a highly irrational, emotionally charged, or blatantly factless argument, the incredibly smart person will often simply nod, smile politely, and stay perfectly quiet, deliberately choosing their inner peace and long-term mental clarity over the deeply frustrating and ultimately futile task of trying to win a shouting match against willful ignorance. They view their spoken words as a highly finite and incredibly valuable currency. They absolutely refuse to spend them on trivial workplace gossip, mundane small talk, or repetitive debates that lead absolutely nowhere, preferring instead to carefully save their input for pivotal, high leverage moments where their specific contribution can actually solve a complex problem, drastically shift a hardened perspective, or add genuine, measurable, and undeniable value to the situation at hand. This strict philosophy of selective participation means that when they finally do decide to open their mouths to speak, their words carry tremendous weight, undeniable gravity, and unshakable authority, instantly commanding immediate respect and absolute silence from the group, because everyone in the room intrinsically knows that if the notoriously quiet person is finally choosing to speak up, it is absolutely guaranteed to be something profound, entirely necessary, and incredibly well thought out. Beyond just efficient cognitive processing and masterful conflict avoidance, there is also a profound element of high-level emotional intelligence and ruthless strategic positioning at play. Because staying absolutely quiet makes you incredibly difficult for potential adversaries to read, giving you an immense, almost unfair advantage in high-stakes negotiations, corporate business meetings, and intensely competitive environments. While the habitual overtalker is busy recklessly spilling all their hidden strategies, deep personal insecurities, and true intentions just to comfortably fill the dead air and ease their own anxiety, the quiet observer is silently gathering all of that raw, unfiltered intelligence to patiently formulate a flawless, impenetrable counter-strategy entirely unbothered by the painfully awkward silences that absolutely terrify average, highly insecure conversationalists. In fact, highly intelligent individuals actually use intentional, prolonged silence as a devastating psychological weapon to draw others out, knowing full well that human nature absolutely abhors a vacuum and that nervous people will compulsively keep talking, often accidentally revealing far more sensitive, damaging information than they ever intended if you simply maintain strong, unwavering eye contact, look at them calmly, and say absolutely nothing in response to their rambling. So the next time you find yourself sitting in a crowded, noisy room and start feeling the intense, overwhelming societal pressure to speak up just to prove that you belong there, remember that true brilliance often whispers, while deep, uninspiring mediocrity constantly screams for attention. And there is immense, undeniable, life-changing power in stepping back from the noise and becoming the absolute master of your own calculated silence. If you have ever found yourself proudly being the quiet, calculating observer in an incredibly loud and chaotic room, or if this deep psychological breakdown deeply resonated with your own personal experiences of navigating exhausting social dynamics and incredibly loud people, please hit that subscribe button right now, leave a huge like on this video to help support the channel's growth in the algorithm, and drop a highly detailed comment below sharing your own personal story about a specific time when staying completely silent gave you the ultimate upper hand. Because I genuinely read every single comment that comes through, and I would absolutely love to hear exactly how you personally use the incredible, unmatched power of quietness to win in your everyday life.